Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I'm not a huge fan of Deadly Assault and haven't been for a while. To be clear, I'm not saying I actively dislike it. It honestly isn't all that bad of an endgame on the surface. However, I do feel as though there could be something infinitely better than it, or a lot of improvements that could be made to the mode as is. Also, I feel like Hoyo are making questionable game design decisions that are affecting the Deadly Assault experience. Hi, I'm Isayama. I make discussion videos centered around gacha games, as well as other fun gacha stuff. I also post silly stream clips, so if that sounds interesting, stick around. So a little bit of background. Deadly Assault was released in version 1.4 as the second rotating endgame mode. It features 3 bosses per fortnightly rotation, which requires you to select 3 teams to fight and score as many points as possible, with 20k points counting as a full clear. At release, I already had mixed feelings on this mode, but honestly, given how I was still learning the mechanics at that point, I chalked it up to skill issue. After a couple of rotations, I did actually grow to like the mode. It forced me to get better at the game and learn team rotations, and the runs that people were posting online were awesome to watch. Honestly, the latter is still true to this day. Some people are just damn good at the game. Over time though, as more and more patches released, I found myself enjoying the experience less and less. And honestly, from a game design perspective, I feel like it no longer works as well as it used to. Of course, I will explain all the reasons as to why I think this, and at the end, I'll suggest some improvements and even alternate game modes. One thing I always hear when a new boss comes out is, I don't like X mechanic because it wastes time, or similar complaints. The Defiler was the main one I remember seeing complaints about. The Defiler has her miasma mechanic, which basically stops the fight for a few moments while you attack a shard or something, and a mechanic where you have to stop and parry walls of shield fellas. I'll level with you and say I do not remember if these sections stop the time or not. Pretty sure the miasma mod does not. I'm not sure about the shields though. Anyway, the point is Hoyo keeps introducing new mechanics to these bosses. Sanguine Sweeper having Corruptive Barrier, which basically stops points going up while enabled. Control skills on several bosses. Basically every boss released as of late has a new mechanic to show off. This in my opinion is a great thing. I love when developers make an effort to create and explore new mechanics and continue to implement the new mechanics into new bosses when they work. The bosses in Zenless in 2.0 have been stellar and keep getting better and better. Except in Deadly Assault. Deadly Assault lent itself well to Season 1 because they had simple designs with few mid-fight interruptions. Bosses that had a phase transition basically just cut that out and started in the second phase, and as far as I remember, only Bringer and Pompeii had a mechanic that disrupted the flow of the fight, correct me if I'm wrong. It was all straightforward with few interruptions, which was perfect for the, I guess, speedrunny nature of Deadly Assault, lack of a better word. So the 2.0 bosses having tons of interruptions can ruin the flow. And some bosses have sections, like Miasmic Fiend, that have a part where you can't hit them yet the timer goes down. Just after a funny circle dodge section thingy where she stands on the fucking ledge and starts throwing spikes at you. You know that one. And I think that is one part that is causing issues in Deadly Assault. Now, do I think they should simplify the bosses? God no. To be honest, I like the fact that the bosses are becoming more mechanically complex. It's not the issue to me. Instead, it is the issue of Deadly Assault just not working well with the new boss mechanics introduced. Like, people complain about certain boss mechanics like the aforementioned Defiler, but that isn't the boss's fault. It is the fault of an outdated, unadjusted game mode that hasn't been meaningfully adjusted since 1.4. You know, I actually just realized while I was writing this, Deadly Assault has not been touched since 1.4. You know, if they do mess with it, I really hope they don't do it dirty like what they did with Shiyu. Speaking of Shiyu, okay, so I'll admit this one's a bit of a wacky take, but hear me out. I think, especially after Shiyu got changed, the two game modes are a little too similar. Both modes require you to score a certain amount of points to achieve a clear in a set amount of time. Of course, there are several differences that make them distinct. The scoring system is entirely different in Shiyu now, with it rewarding your performance at the beginning of the run rather than throughout, like Deadly Assault does. And Shiyu features more boss and elite enemies, while Deadly Assault features exclusively notorious bosses. But when you ignore the inner workings and look at both modes at a surface level, they're both extremely similar. I feel like they could have made something a little more distinct with Deadly Assault aside from a different scoring system and boss variety. Of course, near the end of the video, like I said earlier, I will share some changes and ideas for different game modes instead of Deadly Assault. Not just parrot on without giving some insight of my own. Now, while these two issues do kind of affect my Deadly Assault experience and my overall opinion on the mode, this next point is the biggest issue with not just Deadly Assault but Shiyu as well, and that is HP inflation. Okay, so this has been a major complaint made by many people for a while now. the inflation of boss HP with each new cycle of Deadly Assault. This graph on screen shows the rapid increase in HP for Deadly Assault through the year 2025. A significant increase in HP, increasing by hundreds of millions in just a month for some bosses. What does this cause? Well, this phases out older characters like Ellen and Zhu Yuan, who used to be more than viable for early Deadly Assault. Sure, you can still clear with these units. Shit, I've seen clears with A rank agents, but you sort of need support from other S ranks or be absolutely cracked at the game. This HP inflation is designed with new characters in mind. With the absolute power these new characters have, like Ye Shengguang and Nangong, the bosses need more HP in order to stand a chance against them. Makes sense. This is a gacha game after all, a free-to-play gacha game, no less. You gotta incentivize people to pull for the shiny new character and fill Hoyo's pockets. It's exclusively how they make money, after all. That being said, I do think there are better ways of doing it. I don't know about you guys, but I pull based on how much I like a character and not by how strong they are, in most cases. If you make a character likable with good design, people will pull without being pressured into doing so. So, I don't know. Maybe focus on design philosophy and making fun, well-designed characters instead of the same copy-pasted outfit 3 times in a row. I'd say people will pay for that. Point is, HP inflation, as well as other factors that are a topic for another video, ruins the balance within the game entirely. New characters have an easy time while older ones have a tricky time. And I know what someone is gonna say, get good, skill issue, blah blah, all that shit. Here's the thing. Most people, not just Zenless players, but gamers in general, play games casually. Most people have jobs or lives outside of this and maybe only have time to do dailies and a couple events. Some people may not even have the means to pull the shiny new character, nor have the time to master all the techniques and rotations or farm top tier discs for each character. These people might still be using an old Zhu Yuan team or Ellen team, for example, hell, maybe even an A rank DPS like Billy. I feel like at the very least getting a clear should be a base expectation. Something that is easy to attain for everyone using whatever character, using at least a good disc drive set. It shouldn't be a walk in the park by any means, but it should be accessible for the entire player base, especially seeing that it is a good source of chromes. For the people who are highly skilled at the game and want to challenge themselves, killing the boss and getting 65k points is an option for them. Now that is something that will be difficult to do. This is why I love Hollow Zero. You can easily clear the content without modifiers for the weekly reward, but there are options and rewards for making it much more difficult for those who want a challenge. That to me is good game design for a game like Zenless. In my opinion, removing HP and power creep alone would help the mod significantly. Characters will be relatively well balanced throughout the game's lifespan with the exception of maybe Void Hunters, who should be stronger than most, and anyone will be able to at least clear the content with relative comfort. Not saying Deadly Assault should be easy, but should at least be accessible for players with older teams to clear with some effort. I hope I got that point across well. On the topic of casual players, this perfectly leads into my final point. Yeah, this is also an issue for Shiyu and kind of ties into the HP inflation issue in a way. Whenever people show an interest in getting into Zenless, this is the first thing I warn them about, and that is you need 3 fully built teams in order to clear the endgame. Granted, this is somewhat fine as, yeah, this is an endgame mode and as such should only be accessible by those who have built teams, and yes, you can get all polychrome rewards by clearing with only 2 teams in Deadly Assault. However, this becomes an issue in relation to the HP inflation problem mentioned in my previous point, where old or standard characters have a harder time clearing than newer ones do. A new player will only have access to whatever banner is running at the moment and whatever standard characters they can pull, which would be mostly A ranks for a while. This honestly sucks for them, and is poor game balancing. They will be missing 2 seasons worth of characters unless there's a rerun. Casual players may also face a similar problem. I know a friend who plays whenever they get the chance, and as such has both missed a lot of characters and doesn't have a lot of characters built that well. When I offered to do Deadly Assault for them, I had a very hard time doing so. Keep in mind, I'm not a great Zenless player, honestly I'm decent at best, but I feel like decent players with decent character options should be able to clear it. I get that endgame is endgame, it is supposed to be worked and grinded towards, and as such for a new player, it will take time to get to that stage. That is normal for every game that has an endgame system. However, thanks to the nature of HP inflation combined with the missing out aspect of a gacha game, this normal progression curve in most other games becomes an uphill slog that could require months of waiting for banners in order to get a good team clear as a casual or new player. Again, I'm not talking about the pros who can clear with a full team of A rank agents. I am mostly aiming all this at casual and new players who, unfortunately, will have a hard time getting anywhere with the endgame systems compared to someone who has pulled on most banners since 1.0 and played since release, like myself. So basically, in summary, new players and casuals have a hard time clearing the endgame, particularly Deadly Assault, thanks to all these factors. Now I want to kind of throw out some ideas that I have for the mode. First listing out some improvements to the base mode, and then also listing some ideas for my own game modes that could work within the scope of Zenless for the most part. Keep in mind that I am in no way a game developer, and these are just rough ideas that aren't fleshed out fully. They more so exist to give food for thought and open up opportunities for discussion. The first improvement I could suggest for Deadly Assault, and honestly probably the most basic improvement, is modifiers, similar to what is found in Hollow Zero. Why? Well, this allows several things. First of all, it gives skilled players something to sink their teeth into and really challenge themselves with. These modifiers, like in Hollow Zero, can enhance boss stats gradually with each modifier selected. This scales up boss HP like what the devs want, while also providing additional challenges like no orange indicators for attacks or bosses start with a miasma bar. Second of all, it gives casual and new players a chance to clear with low-end teams, just like Hollow Zero. The base mode would be possible for a casual to clear without modifiers, which overall would improve the new/casual game experience. And lastly, this would mostly remove the need for HP inflation in future, assuming power creep stops. This last point is a maybe though, because that entirely depends on the devs' willingness to stop power creeping characters. Point is, this is effectively adjustable difficulty with separate leaderboards based on modifiers selected. Or better yet, to simplify the leaderboard system, maybe there are difficulty tiers rather than modifiers. I think this is the easiest option to implement and is the healthiest for the balance of the game while keeping casual and veteran players happy. It sounds like the best of both worlds to me, plus it keeps Deadly Assault mostly as it is gameplay wise, pleasing those who already love it as is. Okay, look, so I know I said the previous point will be the easiest to implement, but as I was writing the script, I remembered the existence of buff effects and realized, shit, those were a bit of an issue too. So let's talk about them. So buff effects are something you can assign to a team that give you buffs against the boss, stuff like increasing sheer force damage or anomaly proficiency. I actually like these. At face value, I like them, but I do not like their implementation, and here is why. These buffs are different every Deadly Assault rotation, and you only have a choice between 3 for some reason. What this means is that you could get, for example, 2 buffs for attack-based teams and another for Rupture, but none for Anomaly. Basically, this is the game telling you that, hey, don't use Anomaly this time around. For me, this hurts the game because it kind of shoehorns you into using specific teams of characters for a specific cycle. If you've been pulling for a while, then this is mostly fine. You likely have 2 attack teams and a Rupture team ready to go. But again, this hurts the newer player experience. Someone might have pulled together 2 attack teams and an Anomaly team, but not Rupture teams because, I don't know, they happen to miss all the Rupture banners or just don't have Manato. It reduces variety in team comps as well. I have 2 suggestions for this, the most simple of which being to remove the system entirely. Or, my suggestion, make all buff effects available for all Deadly Assault rotations. This way you still have buff effects as part of the game, but you aren't soft restricting the use of certain teams. There is no reason to do that anyway, in my opinion, aside from trying to coerce people into pulling the currently available character. There is no reason to soft restrict certain team comps and reduce the team variety in your game. This goes for making bosses that counter certain characters, which is another topic. Finding that you can't use your favorite team that you invested time and resources into is not a good experience. Yes, a team like Nangong, Yuzuha, and Alice should not be good for everything, but like, that's what the element system is for. Oh shit, the boss resists physical? Best not use Alice and instead maybe use Miyabi. This is good because you're still using the same team, just a variation, and not just cutting out an entire category of characters just because, why not, I guess. This change alone won't fix Deadly Assault in my opinion, but it would certainly help newer/casual players with clearing it since they can use whatever team they have while having the correct buffs available. One idea for Deadly Assault could be a sort of boss rush mode. Here is roughly how it would work. There is only 1 run instead of 3 separate runs like there are now, and as such you will only need 1 team of characters. You'll be given, say, a 10-minute timer total. That is a minute longer than it would take to clear Deadly Assault, so it works out for those who only have a short time to log in. You will know what boss you are about to face too, so you can adjust your team accordingly for the specific boss. It will also show modifiers, buffs, debuffs, whatever for that particular stage. Once in, you will fight the first listed boss, the boss having relatively normal HP without any form of inflation. Once defeated, you will move on to the next stage. This will show you the next boss coming up and will allow you to adjust teams once again before heading out. The goal will be to kill as many bosses as you can within 10 minutes. If you manage to beat 3 bosses, then that will count as a clear and will reward you with the full amount of chromes, lining up nicely with the expectations of the current Deadly Assault. If you beat more, you could have Denny rewards and maybe a hamster cage pass or a tuning calibrator for those who go above and beyond and clear 10 bosses, for example. This way you can have an easily accessible mode for casual players while also giving them incentive to push further if they want to. And you are giving those who want to challenge themselves something to strive towards. A 12 boss clear run or something could be a benchmark pro players would want to beat. All this while also making the mod distinct from the how many points can I score in X time formula that Shiyu and Deadly Assault has. Like Hollow Zero, you could also have modifiers and separate leaderboards based on modifiers used for those who want to challenge themselves. The only thing I don't fully love about this idea is that in my opinion it is still a little too similar to Shiyu before the patch that changed it. Shiyu was also a kind of boss rush of sorts, and you had to clear 2 bosses in 5 minutes to get the S rank clear. However, since the patch, I feel like it would make it a little more distinct compared to Shiyu, but I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. This idea is one that I like much more, as there are nearly infinite possibilities. I got this idea from that one secret floor in the battle tower where there were 2 dead-end butchers that you had to fight at the same time. I've always found that odd that, to my knowledge, this is the only time they have done this. And by that I mean put 2 notorious boss fights in the same arena. This got me thinking, with the amount of enemies and bosses in the game that is ever expanding with every patch, and with the amount of pre-existing modifiers that buff, debuff, and fundamentally change how you approach a fight, there's quite a lot of untapped potential here. This version of Deadly Assault will tap into that potential. So, 3 bosses listed every week will be replaced by different challenges instead, with the layout being very similar to the current Deadly Assault minus the scoring UI. Each challenge will require a team of 3 agents, most of the time, and you can select from any of the buff effects as per my previous suggestion. Oh, and of course you can't share agents between challenges. However, the content of the challenges is vastly different from Deadly Assault. The focus of getting as many points as fast as possible has shifted more towards complete a challenging combat scenario that is unlike anything else you have faced. The challenges could range from fighting a buffed up bringer that attacks at 1.2 times speed to fighting the Defiler, but halfway through the fight fucking Sanguine Sweeper shows up with less HP. Fight Thracian, but only 1 team member allowed. See what I mean by how limitless this could be? Could even have modifiers like standard buffs or basic debuffs such as less defense or whatever, but you could also get real fucky with it by limiting team size, removing orange indicators, so much stuff. Now, of course, these challenges contradict what I was saying earlier about how casual players should have an easier time and all that, but let me explain my solution to this. The 3 challenges will operate under a sort of difficulty system. The first challenge will be the most tame. Maybe just fight a boss of sorts with a few debuffs. The second will be more intermediate, like fight a sped up boss with cannon fodder being thrown in throughout. Finally, the third challenge will have the crazy shit and will test the mettle of those who want that challenge. Only the first and second challenge will have polychrome awards, so it is within reach of newer or casual players, while the third could have hamster cage or a tuning calibrator or whatever that other thing is called, I don't know. Could even have it reward a couple standard banner pulls, since in my opinion those were a little too uncommon. That said, you can get more limited pulls from that, so that could have mixed reception. This mode also differentiates itself from Shiyu and Deadly Assault as it will not have a timer or scoring system. The goal is to just survive and beat the challenge. Now, there could be modifiers to say add a time limit or require a story to be reached like Deadly Assault on some challenges. This would most often appear on the second and third challenge though. This mod in my opinion also matches the name too. Deadly Assault sounds more fitting for an array of highly deadly challenges. This, I think, will be an extremely fun endgame mode. I mean, I'd play it. The main downside is that it takes a lot more effort from the developers to cycle this every 2 weeks. They have to put more thought into modifiers, write code to make altering the state of the arena, or have multiple bosses appear during the fight, and test to see if the abomination they made is actually possible. As such, while I personally would love to see something like this, it is likely just unfeasible. Deadly Assault is great from a game development standpoint, as it is very simple for them to configure for each cycle and allows them more time to work on more pressing stuff. A little off-script section at the end. I suppose it could be possible if they design a kind of easily modifiable system that allows them to quickly adjust and add modifiers and stuff every couple weeks for Deadly Assault. I'm not a game developer, like I said earlier. I did a bit, but I don't really know how this would work. But I mean, when I said before it's impossible, it could actually be possible. It'll just take a bit of work and kind of rebuilding the mod from the ground up. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, those are all my issues with the current Deadly Assault and my personal suggestions and ideas that I figured I would share. Hope you all enjoyed my little rant and ramble about this. This is my first long-form project and first time making anything like this before. So let me know what you think in the comments. Any feedback will be appreciated, positive or negative. Also, let me know your opinion on this subject. Do you disagree? Do you have an idea of your own? Go ahead and share. And of course, if you're new here and like what you see, please hit like and subscribe. It's free, helps me out so much. Anyway, all of you take good care, stay safe, and have a wonderful day.